What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish at the Moment. Today we're going to be doing another uncut offshore video on a small lake here in Arkansas. It's the first week of August and fishing has been extremely tough. Filming a Catch 15 challenge during this uncut video and then posting the edited version onto the YouTube channel later on. So you're going to be seeing my full process of how I try to catch 15 pounds on a lake in August. This is not going to be an easy challenge by any means. I honestly am not sure I'm going to even be able to get it done because fishing has been tough on every lake I've fished recently, and catching quality fish is really tough. But we're going to try to use the electronics and dial in those better quality fish as best we can and hopefully put 15 pounds in the boat. Before we get into that though, do want to give a huge shout out to the sponsors of these Fish at the Moment uncut videos. First, Bridgeford Foods. One new snack I've been trying from Bridgeford, guys, are these smokehouse sausage sticks. They're an awesome little snack. They are very easy to pack in the boat, and they are a great addition to your boat snack arsenal. You guys know Bridgeford Foods has been sponsoring the Fish at the Moment channel for a long time. Huge shout out to Bridgeford. Definitely try out these new smokehouse sausage sticks. You can find them at your local grocery stores. You can also find them online at dollar stores all over the place. So that white Bridgeford packaging, definitely pick up some of these sausage sticks. Really good deal. Also want to give a huge shout out to Integrated Boat Works over in Tulsa. My friend Darren there runs a great shop and he installs electronics for a lot of the Bassmaster Elite Series pros and tour level pros. He set up my entire boat with all the crazy electronics you see me running here, so he knows what he's doing. And he also has a great website where you can actually purchase some electronics equipment, and you can also get some consultations from him on the best electronics to use, the types of fish finders for different types of fishing, different species, stuff like that. So definitely head over to integratedboatworks.com. I'll leave a link down in the description to his website, or just give Darren a call over at his shop and he'll get you squared away. Okay guys, so we're here about 2.5 to 3 hours after I started this video, and I kind of cut out the last 3 hours of footage because I haven't caught anything. I've caught one like 10-incher off of a roadbed, did some shallow brush pile fishing, fished some shallow grass, some offshore grass, shallow shade lines, did a bunch of stuff, and have not caught a single quality fish or really got many bites at all. Now, I do have a game plan in mind when situations like this occur, and usually what that game plan is run as many pieces of brush as I possibly can, making 2 to 5 casts per brush pile and just running as many pieces of brush as I can possibly think of. This is a strategy that I start employing when I feel like I can't find a bigger concentration of fish, I can't find a school of fish, and that's what I normally do in these uncut videos is I try to find groups of fish that are maybe 10 to 15 fish large. I found one school that had small fish in it that I caught one fish out of, but not what we're looking for. And this is a strategy that is very effective in tournaments, and when you're fishing team tournaments especially, because you really only need 5 bites in a tournament. The problem with the strategy is it takes a long time to implement, and if I was in a tournament right now, for example, I would have 5 hours and 15 minutes left in my day if it's an 8-hour tournament. So what that means is that I would have 5 hours to fish as many brush piles as physically possible. Now, the ideal scenario is you have a bunch of brush piles already found off the bat. That's ideal stuff. That's not always reality though. So what I'm going to show you right now is how I would actually go find some brush, also regraph some brush that I've already found to show you what it looks like on side scan, down scan, things like that. And really what you're doing with this brush pile deal, guys, is you're not worried so much about what the brush piles look like on down imaging or 2D sonar. The main goal is just fish as many brush piles as possible, trying to target isolated individual bass. A lot of these brush piles are going to have crappie in them. They'll have smaller bait fish, bluegill, all kinds of stuff, and there might be one bass in that brush pile that you really can't even see when you graph over it with your standard electronics. This means the best way to find these brush piles is honestly just to side scan for them. So I'm actually going to switch to my side scan view, not worry so much about anything else, and I'm just going to start marking brush that I see. So we got a brush pile on the right side of the screen, and we're going to hit these fast and furious. There's a bunch of brush in this area, so I'm just going to keep brush, or keep marking as much brush as I can find. I'm going to sometimes switch back between these views just to make sure I don't miss any really good brush that I've maybe marked in the past. But honestly, it's just a matter of dropping as many waypoints as possible and then coming back and hitting every single tree icon that you have with something like a shaky head, a jig, a swim bait, making 2 to 5 casts per area and playing the odds. It's an odds game with this brush pile deal. You're not necessarily coming out here to catch 10 fish per spot, and you may only get bit out of 1 out of every 10 brush piles. So it's kind of a sketchy pattern if you don't have enough brush piles found, because honestly today, if I can run, let's say 15 to 20 brush piles, I might only get 1 to 2 bites. You sometimes need to run 30, 40, 50 brush piles at times to get enough to actually stand a chance of catching a limit of fish, especially in this August time of year when fishing's really tough. So I want to show you how I at least do that. This is not going to be a video where we catch a ton of fish. That's not the goal of this. But if you are a tournament guy and you're a guy who wants to really understand how to catch better quality fish, this is the video for you, because we are going to be doing a proven tournament tactic right now in this video. And it's one of those things that gets, again, 5 bites, maybe maximum, 10 bites a day if you're lucky and hit the right tops. And again, I don't have these brush piles found, so if I was in a tournament scenario, it would be a lot better if I had brush piles found beforehand. But I'm also not going to get too caught up. There's a little pile right there. Again, about what I see on the graph, you could look at these brush piles, you can say, okay, maybe there's a better arch here, or a better arch there, or whatever, but I'm not gonna get too caught up in that right now, because I'm not seeing any brush today that has a bunch of fish on it. I'm just seeing a lot of smaller isolated piles is kind of what I would say, that have just a few fish scattered. So because I'm not seeing any, I mean, I've graphed 3 or 4 pretty good brush piles already today that I normally would have a school of fish in them, and because they don't, I'm not holding my hopes up that I'm gonna find a school of fish in a pile. It's just really fingers crossed that I can get 1 fish out of 3 to 4 brush piles, maybe catch a couple fish out of 1 brush pile, and then you have your 5 fish in the boat and you're able to do pretty well in a tournament, or like for me today, this catch 15 challenge. So just again, found the brush pile there. I'll show you what I'm gonna do to fish these spots. Honestly, I usually just take a 1-2 punch with the brush piles. Big worm this time of year and a shaky head. I might swim a big swim bait over the top of a couple of them, but I don't know if there's a lot of big bait in this lake, if it's really gonna be a big deal to like throw a big swim bait over the top, though I may do that on a couple. And another thing I'm gonna be looking for just a little bit is I do wanna see if I can find any just isolated random laydowns and logs like the one on the right side of the screen here, but with a few more branches. A lot of times these are harder to see on Livescope and things like that, the flatter trees that are laying straight on the bottom, and so those get overlooked by a lot of anglers, which is a good thing when we're out here. So we're trying to fish stuff that maybe is a little bit less pressured, a little bit less beat up by other anglers as well. So all in all, this is a pretty straightforward approach. Again, just get on the side scan, graph until you see brush, mark all the brush you can, and then we're gonna come back and we're just going to hit all these brush piles in rapid fire succession. That's kind of our goal. If we do see something else that really jumps off the screen, we obviously can fish that as well. You know, a spot that has a pile of fish on it that I missed in my first few hours, that's definitely something we'll check out. But again, I didn't really see anything that was fantastic earlier, so we're just gonna get the side scan on and just kind of roll. There's a couple key little stretches where I know this lake's not very big, so I kind of know where most of the guys put their brush piles out here, but I want to kind of regraph because some of the brush gets kind of degraded over time, and I don't come out here that often to know exactly which brush piles are like nice and clean. There's also new brush piles that get put in, so it's always good to kind of keep them honest and graph multiple, or graph your areas even though if you know, quote unquote, know where the brush piles are, because a lot of times you can find new stuff or stuff that just got planted. Like there's a nice little brush pile right there that's kind of a sneaky one. That's right there. It looks like a little Christmas tree. Mark that. It's kind of sneaky right on that little rocky vein, and it ends in that brush. I'm not gonna be picky about what type of brush piles, what type of trees yet. If I get to a point where I start catching several fish out of like Christmas trees or something like that, then maybe I could start dialing that in, and that's something that you can definitely do. I'm not gonna get that picky right now. I'm just gonna focus on trying to fish as many piles as possible. Though, if you were again in a tournament scenario, you may be able to start to identify what types of trees are what, or which trees are holding better quality fish or not. And there's always, you know, things like finding brush that's on the edge of one of these road beds or something, and maybe all the brush piles on the edge of this road bed are better. Or maybe there's a certain depth that all the brush piles are in, 10 foot. All the brush piles are in 10 foot that are good. That's really good information once you start catching fish, but until you start catching fish, and unless there's like a really specific thermocline or something that's been established on the lake, it's really hard to go out and just, you know exactly what you're looking for. So I don't, again, get too caught up in what I'm graphing off the bat. I just graph for as much brush as I can find, and that is good enough for me. There is some really nice stuff on side scan here, I will say. Some nice rock and all kinds of stuff, but I'm not seeing any sort of really good fish activity around it. It's just a bunch of rock. So we're gonna keep rolling. I was hoping I could find a new brush pile or something that's jumps out right here, but there's a couple of trees right there. That's kind of nice. 1, 2, 3 trees. And there's a nice tree right there. It's kind of a little wad of stuff. These are all Christmas trees. Oops. I try to use the same icons, and this is a laydown, so I'm going to use a symbol for the laydown. Some of these are brush piles. Some of these brush piles are Christmas trees. Some of them are like cedar trees or more trees with more branches, bigger branches. So I try to differentiate them if I can, at least, if I remember to, so that way when I come back I can have the Christmas trees marked as Christmas trees, and then the cedar trees or the branchier looking trees marked as branchier trees. So that's kind of the game plan. But let's get rolling. I'm gonna run through here, kind of graph this little bay. We're gonna run up here just a little bit to another little stretch. Usually has some brush on it. Okay, we're over here. I'm trying to move fast on this deal because I don't really want to get too caught up. Let me make sure everything's recording. I don't want to get too caught up, guys, in the graphing and then try to find something that's too specific right off the bat here, because I really don't have a clue of what's going on, even though I've been out here for 2.5 hours. And this is the most consistent pattern in August for me by far. If I'm struggling, like if I was on the struggle bus and I didn't really know what to do on a given fishing day, which is literally what's happening today, I go back to the brush, I graph it, and I just try to see if I can make something happen with it. There's a brush pile right there. That's really nice. Knew about that one, so there's a big brush pile right there. That's almost too big for what I like, to be honest. It's so big that it's like, it's on the left side of the screen. It's almost too big, too much, but we're gonna mark it anyways. We might try it. It's very branchy, so we'll do that. It's almost too much brush, but it's okay. I like less obvious brush piles. Like there's one right there that's really sneaky. There's actually a couple of them right there. They're pretty sneaky in that rock right there. It's like 2 or 3 of them. That looks a lot, those look a little bit better to me because they're a little bit sneakier, a little bit less obvious. We got one right there, looks pretty good. And then we got another one right here. And then we also have a Christmas tree, I think, right there. So we'll keep rolling. And we just have these waypoints scattered out now, and we can run back and just fish, fish, fish. And it's not super hard to find brush piles if you have your settings set up right on your side imaging. Just side scan in these general areas out in front of pockets and coves, all kinds of stuff. And you should be able to find brush relatively quickly. If you are having trouble with your settings on your fish finder, I do have Sonar settings guides available over on fishthemoment.com, where I have set up a bunch of different units to show you what all of the best settings are, things like that. And I also have a sonar interpretation guide over on fishthemoment.com that shows you how to identify different types of structure and cover on your fish finder. I do see one tree down here that's real sneaky and hard to see, but it's right there. I'm gonna mark that. It's a nice little area right there. I'm gonna run up a little bit further because there's more brush up here. There's a little flatter spot up here. We're gonna graph up here a bit. And I actually already graphed this today and marked all these brush piles just as like a precaution for later. So what I'm thinking is I'm just gonna pull up and start fishing these brush piles and show you how I do that. Basically what I'm gonna start by doing is getting into the wind. So the wind is blowing basically right now from ahead of me from the north. So, or at least from the top of the screen here. So I'm going to position my boat, get that range ring set, which is at 150 feet. And I'm going to get it right at the edge of that first set of waypoints right there. And then I'm going to switch over to the Livescope view and get kind of lined up. You could also line up on these spots with the chart. I'll kind of show you how I do that with the chart real quick. Let me just pause this recording and start it over real fast. Okay, there we go. So if you want to get yourself lined up on this brush pile, basically what you need to do, get your front graph linked up to your back graph so you have your waypoints on the screen here. And then just basically get that heading arrow going directly at those brush piles. And you can put range rings and a heading arrow on your mapping. Again, I have Sonar settings guides that show how to do this on all these different units, Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin. And then once you're lined up, either you can spot lock, like right here, I could just spot lock, I'm about 120 feet out, and I can just cast straight ahead of the boat, line up with like a tree out in front of me or something like that. Or you can turn on the Livescope. I'll turn on the Livescope just for you guys so you can kind of see what's down there because it's more fun that way. But my trolling motor is pointed the back way behind the boat, so you're not going to see anything in particular. But I am lined up on that brush pile, so I'm not even going to take the boat off spot lock. I'm just going to pick up a football jig. This is just a 3/4 ounce football jig with a kamikaze craw on it, big bite baits, and you can kind of see some stuff down there. There's a little brush actually you can kind of see on the screen. It's only pretty close out there. I need to get my range extended a little bit. It's actually this pile's a little bit closer than I thought. Maybe that range ring is set. What is that range ring set at? Maybe my range ring is set to. No, it was good. Huh. Well, may have marked it weird, but anyways, that brush pile is like 50 feet away from me. It's not 100 feet, but it's fine. We'll be good. Not going to be the end of the world. And we're just going to fire on this brush pile. Let me check to make sure everything is still rolling. I always like to make sure we're not messing up a recording or anything. Okay. So we're going to drag through these piles real quick. I'm kind of pulling into one right now. Now, with this brush pile game, I'm not making a bunch of casts on these piles. I'm going to make a few casts. You can see those fish are kind of set up around that thing, actually pretty high up in the water column. I'm going to try to throw a swim bait down there over the top of that thing just to see if they would react to that, because there's a big fish down there on the bottom. Throw a swim bait over the top of that. I'm only going to make 5 or 6 casts on this, each brush pile maximum, maybe 4 casts maximum, and then move on. Just working my swim bait over the top of that tree. I'm dropping it down the side right now. See if one of these big fish will come up and try to eat my swim bait. It's out there at like 40 feet right now, the swim bait is. None of those fish came over, probably because they're smaller crappie or something like that. So I did bring that big swim bait over the top of them, and then I'm gonna toss that jig in there like 2 times. And then we're gonna roll, because if they don't eat that jig, a couple of casts, or the big worm, basically I go to a 3/4 ounce jig when I'm fishing these deeper piles, these like 20-foot brush piles. And then as I get to these shallower brush piles, I'll pick up the 10-inch worm. And that's kind of my 1-2 punch. May pick up the shaky head a little bit if I feel like I just can't get bit on the jig or the big worm. But for right now, I have a feeling if there's a big one down there, they're just gonna want a nice big meal, as hot as it is outside. I don't think I'm gonna need to work them that hard with like a shaky head or something to get bit. Okay, so I worked that jig through there twice through that brush pile. Didn't get a bite, so we're moving on. May seem crazy. Ooh, that's a big fish up there. What is that? 1 second. There could be some random big fish just kind of cruising around up here too. I don't know why that fish is just up there, but I'm gonna... Can you spook? Yeah, threw a glide bait over at him. Just completely spooked. It's okay. So we got another brush pile up here. I always like to keep those big, if you see a big, like there's a big dot right there, right in front of the screen. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's like a freaking 10-pound bass or if it's a carp or what it is. Looks like a big old bass is what it looks like to me. I've been catching some randoms around these brush piles too, on like a big Magnum flutter spoon and stuff like that. So I have a couple of baits out here just for these fish that are roaming around the brush. Not all these big fish just get in the brush piles. And when you see one that's that big, probably should have the spoon and everything ready. Kind of lost him. There was a big right there. Wherever he went, he kind of disappeared on me. Okay. Don't want to waste too much time fishing for random fish out here, but I know that's a good way to catch a real big one too, so I'm trying to keep those honest. And then I'm just going to get to this next brush pile, sitting out here, 80 feet away from the boat. Fire over in its direction. Make a couple casts with the jig. I wonder what that giant fish was that we saw though. Kind of curious. My second cast through this brush pile. I kind of hit it down the left side. Now I'm hitting it down the right side, and I'll probably make one more cast on that thing and then move on. Just 3 casts in that brush pile. Think about it almost, guys, like basically I'm fishing a 3/4 ounce football jig here. It's like flipping a shallow laydown. How many flips are you gonna make on a shallow laydown? Usually for me, I'm gonna make 3 flips, maybe from like 3 different angles or whatever, but after I make those 3 flips, I'm moving on. And you have to almost think about these offshore brush piles as shallow laydowns, not so much as like this sweet offshore spot that's a big school of fish, especially when you're fishing just as many as possible and you're just trying to like play the numbers game. You can see my bait went down there 50 feet right in that brush. When you're trying to play the numbers game with this, it's basically like you're doing deep water flipping, is how I would explain it to people, especially now that the Livescope makes that so easy. But even back when I was just doing it with lining up with the waypoints and everything, that's how I thought about fishing brush, is it's just deep water flipping. That's all it is. So we got another brush 80 feet out. It also is nice when you have an area that kind of has somewhat of a concentration of brush piles. So now that I've fished that brush pile that's right underneath the boat right now at 20 feet, I've already fished that. So we're just gonna let the boat drift over that. And we're gonna run to the next one. And if you can have a spot that has 6, 7 brush piles in an area, it makes you a lot more efficient as well. Though there are times when the one isolated brush pile by itself is the better deal. Kind of like when you're flipping down the bank, if there's one isolated laydown, sometimes that's the deal. So you don't want to get caught up in just fishing an area that's loaded with brush. So you kind of have to do a little bit of both, but casting this, you can see I'm fishing pretty quick. That's why I like a 3/4 ounce jig too when I'm doing this, because you can get that jig in there, get in there quick, and usually 95% of the time you're going to get a bit on your first or second cast in these brush piles. You're not going to have to sit there and soak it and soak it and soak it. There are days when you kind of do need to do that, but I would say that that's more rare. Ooh, I think one may have eaten it. Nope, one reacted to it. I hopped it hard out of that brush and popped it up to see if one would actually eat it. Kind of like stroking a jig almost. You can see those fish they're freaking out, going right and left. I don't know what they are. There's little ones, but let's scan over here, make sure we're not missing any good brush on that side of the boat or up there before we move to the next pile. Okay, next one is up there. So now we're getting some shallower piles. So I'm actually going to go put up the football jig, because those piles were in like 18 to 20. These next piles are up here in like 10, and I just like to drag a big worm in shallower brush piles. That's just always been my preference. And then I throw the football jig in the deeper brush piles. I would normally say like 10 foot or less, I'm throwing the big worm. Oh, golly, there was one. He hit that thing hard. How'd you not eat that fish? I felt that on the end of that super long cast. Is that a little one? Get that thing really hard. But as I was saying, 10 foot of water or less, I go with the big worm, and then 10 foot or more, I'll go with the football jig, and there's a little bit of room for error in there. It's not like the perfect rule of thumb, but that's just kind of what I like to go with, because I'll throw a 3/4 ounce weight on this 10-inch worm, and I can still fish it pretty effectively in 10 foot of water kind of quick. But once you get deeper than that, it's a lot more efficient to fish with the big football jig, to be honest. And for those who are at home keeping score, you want to remember how many brush piles I'm actually fishing. So I'm not going to be fishing. Oh, dang it. I was reeling that in. I hit another brush pile. I guess there was another one in there. Let me retie that worm real quick while I talk. So for those keeping score at home, I fished 4 brush piles already. Got a bite out of one. But nothing crazy. Let me switch to this other camera angle so you can kind of see me as I'm talking. And it's also kind of interesting because I've been fishing this spot for a total of 13 minutes, and I fished 4 brush piles in 13 minutes. So think about that when you're trying to go around the lake. Are you fishing fast enough? Are you fishing 4 brush piles in 13 minutes, or keeping a pace that's similar to that? Because if you're not, you're fishing way too slow on all these things. You need to be moving, and it's definitely not the right, you're not efficient enough fishing offshore like you are up shallow, where you can make so many casts, to spend 10 minutes fishing each brush pile. It's not gonna work. So anyways, I will show you what I'm rigging up here. Basically, I have a 20-pound Sunline FC Sniper fluorocarbon. I'm gonna peg this with a bobber stop first. So I'm gonna just grab a bobber stop, put it through there. I like to always peg my slip sinkers when I'm fishing brush. So do that, wet your line, up the line so you don't burn it when you pull the peg up. Grab a slip sinker. This is a Denali 3/8 ounce tungsten slip sinker. Then I'm going to tie a Palomar knot to a 5/0 offset worm hook by Gamakatsu, just a Gamakatsu 5/0 offset worm hook. Super basic, just simple deal. And then I'm tying on a Big Bite Baits 10.5 inch B2 worm in the plum apple color. It's the only color I throw in my big worms. I catch them in clear water, dirty water, doesn't matter. I just always throw plum apple, and it always seems to work really well for me. So got that all rigged up. We're back in business. Just pull that peg down. Keep firing at these piles. I hit that one pile. I kind of bummed because I think I may have screwed it up a little bit because I had to break off. But I've broken off in piles before too and still caught fish, so not the end of the world. Look at all these piles though. There's a bunch of sticks and trees and everything through this area. Let's see if one is home. Okay, one more cast on this pile. And there's a pile over here I haven't hit, looks like. Oh, need to switch to the Livescope view. Remind myself that. There we go. We good? Okay. That would have been bad. Okay. So, worked that pile. Did I work that one? No. There's a pile right here I've not hit. There's a bunch of Christmas trees through here. Not seeing any big fish on the Livescope, but that does not mean much. Sometimes those fish are really good at hiding in the piles and you just won't see them, and then all of a sudden, boom. There's also times when the big ones just kind of randomly roam around the piles and they're not actually in the pile itself. So, I don't know. I don't know what kind of day today is. Another pile over here. There's a bunch of piles. I just keep firing on them, hitting as many as we can. So I think at this point, this is like my 7th pile I fished in like 20 minutes. one more that's at the end of that cast there. Should be another one way out there too. That's sad we didn't get one bite off any of these though. But that's also the game. Again, if I catch a fish out of, after fishing 10 or 15 brush piles, I'm pretty happy. You're just playing the odds. I'm in that pile right now. Come on, fish. Ah! Pulled that thing hard too, and there's little ones in this pile. And these piles right here, there's just some little ones. How did he pulled the rod freaking down. I don't know how he did. I don't know how I didn't hook that fish. It just had to be a very little one. It's okay though. I'm not worried about, if it's a little one, I'm not super worried about. Got him. That's not a little one. That's a good one. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Oh, yes! Oh, brush pile fishing, guys. Gotta freaking love it. That is a good one on that big worm. I told you guys, you just gotta fish him and fish him and fish him, and then eventually one's just gonna eat it. You just gotta, you saw the whole process right there. Big worm, big fish right there. Let me pause this recording real quick, make sure I got it. There we go, guys. 3 pounds, 10 ounces, 3 pounds, 11 ounces. It's bouncing between those two, but a solid fish. Right what we needed to do to get this Catch 15 challenge started. Beautiful bass right there. Oh, there we go, guys. Got that fish on the big 10-inch worm out of one of these brush piles up here. And there's just several of them in this area. That fish bit pretty close to the boat. Honestly, I was probably only 40, 50 feet away from that brush pile when he ate. So it's not like I necessarily needed to be far away from him or anything to get him to bite. It's, again, kind of just like deeper water flipping. That's all we're doing right now. Just working that worm up through these brush piles. Once you're in that brush, oh golly. Maybe I was just, no, that was a fish. That was a fish. I don't know what was happening there. My worm is getting chewed up right now. That big 10-inch worm, it works. I'm gonna try to see if I can get casting all these little brush piles. There's a bunch of them around here. And then we've marked a bunch more. I mean, this brush pile little stretch here looks identical to the 3 or 4 other ones we've already marked, which is actually, these are all little Christmas trees. These aren't even the bigger laydowns. These are, that bass came out of about 10 foot of water out of one of these Christmas trees. So that could be a sign that's, oh my gosh, he had that worm. Eat it, fish. He had that thing and was just, this brush pile right here has got him. I think this is the same one. I'm actually going to pull up my mapping. I'm going to hit waypoint right here. I'm just going to put a little triangle. Okay, cool. That way we have this, we know which brush pile we were fishing, because we may be able to come back and catch them, because there's enough fish in this little brush pile right here. As many bites as I've gotten out of it, there's more than 1 or 2 fish in it. There's some good ones down there. It's just crazy because if you look at that brush pile on like Livescope right now, it doesn't look like much. I mean, it's that brush pile that's out there at 50 feet. There's one that's even in between us. But like, if you look at that thing, it's not like you see a bunch of big dots swimming around it. And I think that might actually be one of the reasons why it's kind of good, is that you don't see a pile of crappie swimming around it, or you don't see a bunch of life. It's pretty barren. And that's why a lot of times I don't like to get too caught up on the brush pile game of, like, there's days when I like to graph for brush and find one that has a bunch of fish in it, and you can see them on your electronics and get real specific with it. But there's other days where it's just run brush, as much brush as you can fish. Just run it and run it and run it. And eventually you're gonna catch some good fish. And it's just a numbers game. That's all it is out here, guys. It's just a numbers game. Whew, check that recording real quick and then keep fishing this stuff. Man, that's so exciting. That's also, guys, why you don't give up and you have backup strategies and plans. Because, for example, I could have just canned the day and been like, man, they weren't biting, I couldn't figure it out, and I could have just completely given up on the day. But instead, I recalibrated, restarted, put myself in position where I could put some quality fish in the boat, picked up a bait I have a lot of confidence in that I can catch big fish in. And really, for me, those two baits are always a jig and a big worm this time of year, especially when it's sunny, it's hot, it's middle of the day. I also think that this bite is developing because when I first got here, there wasn't as much sun. There were more clouds in the sky. I think these fish had scattered out, especially because we had clouds all morning, where now with the sun up, these fish are gonna stop roaming. They're gonna go straight to these brush piles, and this makes this bite even better. So it's one of those deals where you have to wait on the right timing a lot of times on this stuff too. It's not like you're just gonna catch them. Oh my gosh. There's fish on all this stuff because I just got hammered again by a little one. This brush pile is 20 foot in front of the boat. It's crazy. There's another one that's like 40 feet over here. Oh wow. Yes, that way too far. Yeah, I'm just picking off all these little isolated deals. You can do this again if you have 360 imaging, if you have just waypoints, you can do this. This isn't a Livescope only technique. I mean, I've been fishing this way literally my entire life almost. Since I was 15 years old, this has been one of my favorite ways to catch fish. A big worm and a football jigger on brush piles. I mean, this is not a Livescope specific deal. This is not a sneaky secret deal either. I mean, so many tournaments across the country have been won doing what I'm doing right now. This is like textbook 101 bass fishing, offshore bass fishing right here. It's made slightly easier. Probably can make this depth range. I don't know why I have it set so wide. There we go. It's made a lot easier with the Livescope. I'm not gonna be over here like, oh, the Livescope doesn't help. Like, the fact that I can literally just cast and know exactly where that brush pile is in front of me helps a ton. But at the same time, like, I had 360 imaging on my boat for a while, and I was doing the same thing with 360 imaging. I've done the same thing with waypoints. The waypoint method's a little bit less consistent because the GPS isn't always perfectly accurate. But this is not a complicated style of fishing, but it's just effective. That's all I can say. So I need to come back and refish these brush piles probably throughout the day too. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the momentum of this spot. And we know that there's some fish up here in that 10-foot zone. I'm just gonna scan around here just to make sure I'm not missing. There's some brush out there too. Is that brush or is that, I don't know what that is. Fire on it real quick. A little bit deeper. I think that's just bait out there. Yeah, it's just random bait. Anyways, so I'm gonna take the momentum. There's a big freaking fish right there. What are those? Oh my gosh. Those are not bass. Those cannot be bass. That's bait, right? That's not a bass. I just need to keep them honest out here. That's just bait. Is that a bass? What is that? That's like 10 feet long. That's not a bass. Whatever that is really freaking big. Anyways, right? Am I crazy, or is that actually could be like a 10-pounder? Those like two 10-pounders right there. When they turn, they take up less of the screen. It makes me think they might actually be something. But then when they turn a different way, it's like, oh yeah, those are really big. And so then I think they're not bass. But I'll drop a big Magnum flutter spoon down there, rip it in front of their face. Okay, they didn't care about that. Yeah, I have no idea what that is down there. Anyways, let's not get distracted. We're on to something. So what I want to do is actually, we're gonna go back reverse order, because I remember that there was a lot more Christmas trees back behind us in the area we graphed. I think I marked like 2 or 3 Christmas trees in a regular laydown back that way, an 8 to 10 foot. And then there's some more over there. We're gonna run all those really quick. Again, trying to spend 15, 20 minutes per spot, not do anything too crazy. See if we can put some good ones in the boat. Okay, let's roll out of here. We're gonna go back over where we saw those shallower tops and Christmas trees right over here. Run those fast, run those over there and then hit those. I gotta be out of here in like an hour, so I only have an hour to fish. So we're gonna make it count. Yeah, we're gonna try to get up to these brush piles. There was a deeper one out here, but I'm gonna ignore that. And then there's these 3 shallower ones that I'm really interested in. And then there's all those brush piles back over there that look really interesting too. So we got several more to hit. We got at least 3 here. We got like 5 back there across the lake. So I'm hoping we can get bit on at least one of these next 2 spots and catch a couple more fish. I only have like an hour left to fish, so I don't know if I'll be able to finish up this Catch 15 challenge, but we are at least gonna be able to show you guys some of this brush pile fishing, because this is pretty fun. Okay, there we go. Let's get on these fish right here. It's kind of deep over here. Need to kind of get acclimated, get my bearings a little bit. I'm going to turn that range a little bit deeper. Let's see here, where are we at with that deal? Okay, so we're kind of on this side of it. Trying to see, these laydowns are pretty tough to see, to be honest, on the Livescope. So I think what I'm gonna do is just fan cast this area, because I can see them on the waypoints, but I can't really see them on Livescope. I think a lot of these were pretty flat down there, so I'm not gonna get too concerned about the Livescope here. Just fire at my waypoints, that's the plan. The wind's kind of blowing from an unfortunate direction for this spot. That's okay. These were some pretty sneaky brush piles, to be fair. One of those we're not going to be able to see on the graph yet, so we'll make our way up a little bit closer. There's a lot of rock and stuff mixed in with all this, so I probably should just try to find that pile. There was an actual Christmas tree up here that really popped off the screen when I saw it. Our way up there a little bit further. Sometimes it's hard to get exactly dialed in on this stuff. I think that's probably right there. Kind of hard to tell, but I think that's the brush pile right there. There's the other one right there. We're on top of them, which is good. I can see both of them now. Yeah, some brush piles are real sneaky and hard to find, especially when they're mixed in with rock and stuff like that. Other ones that are tricky to find are ones that are mixed with standing timber. Oh, there they are. A lot of times I catch fish mixed with a standing timber, or catch fish out of brush piles that are mixed with standing timber, and those are very sneaky brush piles. You can see those brush piles very clear now. 10 foot of water, right at the depth we need, 70 to 90 feet away from the boat. So spot lock is right here. I kind of got a good casting line up on it. There's a little stick up actually even sticking out of the water up there. I don't know if that's part of it, but spot lock us right here on this so we don't drift into them, because we're kind of, the wind is wanting to blow us into the piles. Oh my gosh, he had that worm. He was pulling, and he never like committed. Another little, like when they do that, guys, and you have a fish, like that fish was, he had the worm and he was going, don't set the hook on him until they got it. Because what's going to happen a lot of times is that you're just going to set the hook. It's going to go, you're going to jam that hook into the brush pile and you're going to ruin the brush pile. You want to feel that fish pull real steady tension and make sure that they just have the whole thing in their mouth. If you set too early on them, which I've done a couple times already to be fair, you end up just pulling your worm in the brush pile, messing everything up. But yeah, there's fish right in this deal too. Now, because we caught that last fish, we actually have the ability to dial this in a little bit more, because we know, okay, Christmas tree, 10 foot of water, in a very specific deal. Now we have something to work with, which is super nice. And not that that fish was, we just had a small one bite, but we saw we had like 3 or 4 small bites in a row out of that one brush pile, and all of a sudden caught 3 3/4 pounder. So just because you get a small bite too, it does not mean you're not going to get a good one here in a second. So I'm kind of fan casting this area since there's like 3 brush piles up here. And I'm trying not to, I would like I did on the last spot, to get up tight to those brush piles and like really make sure I'm casting straight in them every time for efficiency's sake, obviously. But when you have the wind like this, you don't want to get blown up on top of the brush either. I could try to work my way to the other side of the brush and work it that way, which I might do here in a second. But I'm just kind of fan casting this because I want to make sure I don't mess up these brush piles, especially since we just got a bite in one of them. I may actually back up though and try to re-angle us into the wind. I probably should have done that from the start. Got too excited on it. There's those brush piles. Man, they look good. There's fish around them. Back us up nice and slow. Okay, so there's that one brush pile right there. You guys can see it 50 feet away from the boat. There's some fish down in it. Did I get my worm over there? About to find out, I guess. Yeah, that's a nice pile. Huh. Apparently I didn't hit that thing very well. Just dragging that thing slow. I'm making more casts through this pile, at this pile normally, because I just got bit, and I got bit out of that last pile and then caught a good one. So I'm gonna try to probably make just a handful more casts than I normally would here. Probably would have been gone by now, usually, but. Don't want to be too hasty on this deal. Kind of hard to hit this cast. These piles are not very big. We saw them on side scan, but they were very subtle. The next spot, the brush piles are a lot more defined, like the spot where I just caught that good one. So, but that does not mean that these are not these are not good, because these look really good. Just trying to get around that brush. It's not super easy with this wind, and then for whatever reason, I'm just keep getting blown, and my casting angle gets screwed up. I'm not seeing my bait down very easy on the Livescope either. I'm not like seeing it land and stuff like that, so not ideal. It's okay though. There's my worm. Okay, I landed right in it that time finally. Oh, I think one's going down to it. I think I saw one swim down to it. Yeah, there's a fish down there on my bait. Okay, one more cast here. Then we gotta roll. Can't waste too much time on these spots, even though it looks good. You cannot get caught up fishing for too long on this stuff. That's a mistake a lot of anglers make. They just want to fish and fish and fish these areas, and they end up wasting a lot of their day on it. Surprised though I didn't get another bite through this thing, to be honest. Just given the fact that I got bit initially. Is that all those piles? I think so. Pretty sure that was it. Just fire in that pile real quick one more time. Pretty sure I hit that though. Yeah, okay. Kind of a bummer, but it's just the game we're playing. Keep rolling. We didn't waste too much time here, I hope. Let me check the recording. Okay, let's keep rolling. Took us 12 minutes basically to fish 3 brush piles. That's 4 minutes a brush pile, not bad. Don't need to be fishing like hyper fast, but we need to be moving a little bit. So let's keep rolling. There's more brush to fish. Marked a brush pile out here. I have no idea what this is. I graphed it a long time ago apparently, so I'm gonna check it. And I need to make sure I get on the other side of these brush piles because the wind's blowing in kind of from the, well, on the map it's coming from the right side of the screen. So I need to kind of get on the back side of these brush piles if I'm gonna fish them effectively. But I do want to graph this brush pile just to see what it is. Not super hopeful it's anything crazy, but at least graph it, since we did mark it at one point in time. I mean, there's a little something there, but nothing great. So let's work our way around these piles on the other side of them. The reason I'm going around these piles over here, guys, I'm just gonna graph just while we're talking, so in case I see another one, is, again, the wind is now kind of blowing from like behind me. It's like blowing from back there, so I want to be into the wind. So we're basically going past these brush piles, spinning around so we can position our boat into the wind, which makes it easier to line up on the brush piles. We're not getting blown into them. We're not in the same scenario where just a second ago where I basically was like having to fight the wind with the piles. That's not a good situation to be in. Now with these brush piles, if you remember, they were kind of on the edge of a little rocky ridge, so this could be pretty good if we hit it right. Okay, here we go. So got these brush piles here. Let's see if we can find them and fire on them. There's one right there. I don't even think I marked that one. Pot of bait there too. Again, just trying to hit as many brush piles as we can. It's the name of the game. Don't get too picky. Don't worry so much about exactly what's happening. You just kind of have to run them and see what happens. There's a good one in that brush pile right there though. Golly, swimming right on the bottom. Swam away from the pile though. Swimming to the boat. Okay, fire on that brush pile that's up there. It's the first one we marked. It should be in the exact same depth and the same deal as that last spot. So, in theory, these should be good. Right in the mouth of a pocket, I mean, everything is the same. So if pattern fishing is a thing, this, one of these brush piles should have them. Just working that worm slow through these piles. I mean, it's not, again, this is not a complicated technique by any means. Anyone can do this. Just throw a worm in a brush pile. I mean, it's not at all complicated. It is an odds game, though. I've talked about that, and to explain that a little bit more, basically what I'm talking about when I say it's an odds game is that you're going to fish 10 brush piles. You might get one fish out of 10 every 10 you fish. So right now we've probably fished 15 brush piles at this point. Maybe, sometimes it's even like worse odds. Sometimes it's 15 brush piles and then you catch one fish. So right now, even if we don't catch fish out of these brush piles, it just means that we need to run more. And we might need to run a lot more throughout the course of a day to catch what we need to catch. And that's why it's good to usually have a backup pattern or something when you're doing this brush pile deal. There's a lot of tournaments I've been in where I've weighed in 3 or 4 fish because I do this all day, and you're just hoping that you get it right and you can get 5 in the boat doing it. But it is a full day effort to do this, and you're gonna run and you're gonna run, you're gonna run, and you just have to have a lot of brush, and it's gonna take your entire day, and you just have to really hope that you can get those 5 bites, run enough brush piles that you have enough to run, so on and so forth. Oh, was that a fish? I may have just shook one off. I couldn't tell if it was a fish or not. I'm not sure what that was. It could have been I could have just shook off a good one, or I didn't. I don't know. Back in there. This brush pile feels good. I have a feeling this one's going to be a fish. I don't know why. You can mix it up too. Like I might throw a shaky head in this brush pile, just a couple casts, just to see if that actually works. Because sometimes that, just changing up your bait from a big worm, 10-inch worm, to a shaky head, you can still catch fish out of these brush piles. You may not catch the size as you do on the big worm or a football jig, but you can still get the bites at least, which is half the battle a lot of times. Man, that feels so good down there. There's like a bunch of brush and a drop off right there. At the other side of it, like, broke that off. Retie. Oh man. Another part of brush pile fishing is losing worms and weights and baits. Probably gonna try to find one more brush pile around this deal, and then hopefully we can, and then if not, we're gonna roll. Let's see here. Bobber stop on. And I still go to a 3/4 ounce. You could go to a 1/4 ounce weight if you wanted to, but I just like a 3/4 ounce weight with my big worms, even in the shallower water, because it just gets the bait down there faster. You can work it more efficiently. There's just a lot of benefits to it, so I just always have done that. That's just my thing. 3/4 ounce. I've been doing it even back in the days when I fished Lake Dardanelle, where I would have I'd be fishing shallow shell beds and stuff in like 4 or 5 foot of water, 3 foot of water. And I'll still drag a 3/4 ounce weight. It just works for me. It's just what I've always done. So that's my deal. But you could definitely get away with a 1/4 ounce and be fine if you didn't want to. if you don't like fishing as heavy a weight, but I always like fishing heavier. That's why I fish a 3/4 ounce jig too. I don't mind fishing heavier baits. I think it actually sometimes generates more reaction strikes, and a lot of times with that worm, they bite that thing while it's just sitting there anyways. So it doesn't hurt just to get that bait down there faster to those fish. One more cast up there. And then we're gonna roll to another set of brush. Golly, that looks so good. Just shocked I didn't get bit out of that, to be honest. Looks so good. A lot of times too, guys, these brush piles, they fire at different times. So just because I'm not getting bit out of this brush pile in this exact moment, doesn't mean I'm not gonna get bit on it at some point throughout the day. So just keep that in mind. A lot of this stuff is a timing deal. Look, got him. There we go. Good one. Not that big, but it's a keeper at least. There we go. Nice fish on the big worm. Another brush pile, another fish. That's what I'm talking about. Got that thing. Whew. That's what I'm talking about. Beautiful fish. Not a super big one. We'll weigh him real quick just for, you know, just to have him on the scale. Just a 1 pound, 8 ouncer. Nothing crazy, but beautiful little fish on the big worm. Let's get back in there, see if I can get another one. I knew that looked too good not to have a fish. Okay, this is another reason why we positioned our boat into the wind, because we just caught that fish. I didn't have to spot lock. I just let the boat drift off, and it blew me away from the brush pile, not into the brush pile. Also, that's the second fish in a row I've caught right after breaking off, I feel like in the exact same brush pile. So that's kind of weird. And I also caught that fish very close to the brush, just like that last fish. Like that fish was 50 feet away from the boat. So just because sometimes I feel like I get really worked up about the distance away I am from the fish and all this stuff, and maybe it doesn't matter as much as I think, especially in this dirtier water. I don't know. Kind of hard to tell, but. Definitely got one more fish in the boat, at least. Not the size we're wanting, but it's okay. You can't control for size a lot of times, guys, offshore and stuff like that. You just gotta fish what's in front of you, and I mean, it's not a bad fish. If we put 2 5-pounders with it, I'll be glad to have a 1.5 pounder, to be honest. So it's kind of how that goes. But we are kind of hitting those odds a little bit better right now. I mean, we just caught a fish there, and that's about 7 spots on average, because this is probably our, I don't know, 13th brush pile. So yeah, we're kind of doing like a 7 piles per fish average right now, which is not bad. Throw back in there and see if we can get another one. There's more piles past that too that look pretty good. There's like one more on the back side of that thing. 70 feet out. That may be the brush pile that fish came out of. Is that one that was a little bit further out. Would have liked that to be a 5-pounder, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, 2 more casts here on this stuff, and then we're gonna roll. I really want to hit more brush because I have to leave here in 30 minutes. That's my topped out time for being here, and I want to just try to see if I can hit like one more brush pile that's got a good one. If I could catch one more 3-pounder plus pounder, I'd be pretty happy with the day, despite how tough it was. And we wouldn't have fished for that long then. We've only been out here for, at that rate, there's another pile over here. I'll fish that too, since we're here. At that rate, I've only been fishing, I started at 11, so that would put me at 4 o'clock. So that'd be 5 hours of fishing, and I feel like that's not too bad. If we had 3 more hours with this deal figured out, I think we could easily put 3 more good fish in the boat, 3 more good keepers. So I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. If you can average a fish per hour on this deal, that's pretty good. This brush pile has a good one in it. Right here. My worm has not made it over to it yet. Oh, there it is. One shot over to eat it. Didn't eat it though. Come on, fish. Huh. Fish is busting on the bank up there. Something's on the bank up there. Apparently they're not all out here in this brush. Come on, fish. I see you down in there. Yeah, what I was just saying earlier when I caught that fish, is that a lot of this brush pile stuff is a timing deal where you can fish these brush piles and you might fish the same brush pile 2-3 times throughout the day. So you don't always necessarily have to have 30, 40, 50 brush piles. If you have 10 of the right brush piles, you can run those 10 brush piles 3 or 4 times a piece. And eventually at times those fish will pull up into them, and it's more of a timing deal than a strictly just running as many brush piles as possible. But it's kind of hard sometimes to know what are the right brush piles, what are the wrong brush piles. That comes more with, man, there's more brush out here. I just keep finding it. That comes just to experience of fishing a lot of brush, just kind of knowing what you're looking for. Like on this, I kind of knew, mouth of a pocket with these Christmas trees, and need to be in that 10 foot of water because that's where I got that first fish. And we were able to kind of dial that in, which was cool. And if this was a regular tournament day or something like that, I could also refish these same brush piles again multiple times throughout the day. And a lot of times catch fish each time you come by. Just make one more cast through here and then we're gonna roll. There's some brush piles up the way that look pretty good that I wanted to check out still. We still got a little bit of time. So let's run around the corner and let's keep rolling these few more brush piles. Because we got a shot catching them. If we get kind of lucky and hit like one brush pile, we catch 2 or 3 in a row, we could finish this challenge up. Okay, let's run around the corner, hit a couple of brush piles, we graft over here. Okay, we're over here. I'm gonna kind of work this way just because we're going into the wind slightly, kind of, I don't know, a little bit. I marked this brush pile here. I don't know what this is. Let me graph this real quick. Oh, this is deep. Okay. I don't really want to fish brush that's that deep, to be honest, right now, but I'm going to keep a couple of them honest, these deeper brush piles, at least, that are over here. So let's stop right here. We got like 4 brush piles, 5 brush piles in a row. I think there's a few other smaller ones I may have missed too, because I just know from history there's a bunch of brush here. Okay, go. So I'm gonna pick up a football jig on these few deeper piles out here. I think some of these are deeper. Oh, say there's one over here. Looks like I marked one potentially over here, but I don't see it. So I'm just gonna pretend that that thing is not marked and then move into this next one. Should be one kind of straight ahead. There it is. Not much of a brush pile, is it? It's just a couple twigs, but sometimes that's enough. Not hitting the cast right. This wind is in a really great direction for screwing me up. Jig is right there. You can see it falling at 50 feet, right down to that brush. I'm gonna hop it up. Okay, we're right there. Work it through there. Nobody wanted that. Some more brush there. This wind shifted directions on me. Now it's blowing from my back. What the heck? That's not good. Bunch of crappie in that pile. Is there a bass down in there? This wind is pushing me from a bad angle. What I'm actually going to do is, oh, they're schooling behind me. What in the world? I've not seen a schooling bass in this lake like ever. So I don't know what that was about, but that was weird. I never see them schooling out here. Guess I'll keep my tush handy over here, just in case they start schooling on me. Okay, let's try to find more brush. There's a bunch of bait out here. Apparently we went over the top of a brush pile. I didn't see it though, so I'm just gonna ignore that. There's one. I cast just a little bit short of it, didn't I? Any other brush out here? This is one of those piles we marked earlier. I'm going to spin the boat around and kind of get a different angle on this because there's actually a couple piles here. This wind shifted and kind of screwed us up slightly. pile. There's my jig. Come on, fish. Throwing the football jig down there just because it's deeper on these piles. They don't look like Christmas trees. They look like they're just regular brush, which I don't know if that really matters that much, to be honest. But I think both the spots we've caught fish out of already were Christmas trees. So that's just something that's kind of an interesting anecdote, is that today it's like the Christmas trees seem to be the deal versus the regular trees. But that could just be pure coincidence. Drag that thing down through there. There's another brush pile. That way, 80 feet. About. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna hit that brush pile real quick, and then we're gonna spin around. There's a brush pile behind us. And I still got a little bit of time, so we can go run maybe a couple more piles, would be the idea. There's a few more I graphed earlier today that we haven't hit, so we may go check those. I think I fished a couple of them earlier in the video, or earlier in the day, but it was earlier in the day. It wasn't this time of day, so maybe they've reset up, which would be kind of interesting if I can catch them out of brush that I've already fished today. But I was about to say first I should catch that fish. It just bit me. He bit me. Didn't take it. Let's roll. A lot of times, so we gotta keep rolling. The jig up, got the big worm. See if we can catch a fish here out of this pile. If I come at it from the shore, I should be able to kind of fish into the wind slightly. This is kind of a weird angle I'm gonna be fishing it at, but I need to kind of keep the wind. The wind is now blowing like directly in this way, so there's not really a great way to approach this brush pile into the wind. Probably should have that ready. There we go. In case they start schooling and I can catch random schoolers, and maybe I catch like a random 5-pounder schooling, who knows. I get lucky sometimes. Not as often as I would like, unfortunately, out here. I feel like I have to work for it every single time I get out here. There's that pile. 100 feet out. Ooh, there's a good one in there. Pretty sure there's a big one in there. I saw. Yeah, there's some nice fish around that pile. We should be able to catch a good one out of this. Come on. Man, this just looks too good not to have a 4 or 5 pounder in it. And probably is one in there. It's just Is it gonna bite right now in this exact moment? That's the question, really. Fingers crossed it does. Fingers crossed I can actually hit this brush pile. I think I hit it that cast. Somehow. There it is. Did hit it. I almost want to switch over to the football jig just because it's hard to feel this worm that far away from the boat and in this wind. I'm kind of right now just getting lined up with the Livescope and then spot locking. It just makes my life easier with the wind like this. A lot of people they ask why I don't have my GoPro or my Livescope on a pole. And the reason I don't do that is because when you're trying to chase fish and like go after individual bass, having a pole is really inconvenient because it's hard to cast and run the trolling motor and do the Livescope. So it's easier if it's on the trolling motor shaft. Now, if you're just gonna fish brush piles like this, yeah, having your Livescope on like a pole or even on like one of those turret things would be great. But I just can't justify putting it on a turret or on a pole because I like to chase those individual isolated fish more. And I feel like that's where a lot of the value of the Livescope comes in. And I can always just do this right here, like what I'm doing, and still get the job done. So that's why I don't have the Livescope turret or stuff like that. What in the world was that? That was a fish. What? What happened? Guess my worm got balled up somehow. But that was weird. That was definitely a fish. That was really weird. It must have been a small one or something. I don't know what happened there. Huh. This brush pile's got him, though. There's a handful of brush piles today that have had some fish in them. This is definitely one of them. I can just tell from the way it looks on the Livescope. You can see it right now, but if you look over there, there's a lot of life. There's just bigger bulbs and arches and stuff around it. I saw a big one in it when we first got here. So there's quality fish in this pile. Right now it's just a matter of can we get one of them to bite. Ah! Dang it. He bit again. I'm gonna switch to switch that shaky head because he bit that thing again. Little jerk. Just eat it. It's a big brush pile. It's a really big brush pile. Come on, fish. We need to get another good one. We fished 1, 2, 3 more, so we need like 4 more brush piles if we're running the odds. We've had 7, taking out 7 brush piles to catch a fish. I really want this one to work because I feel like there's fish here. But I'm not going to force it either. I feel like that's a really good one right underneath the boat. There's some good fish down in that pile. One more cast right down that chute right there. And then we're gonna run, hit those other brush piles. I got 30 minutes. So we can hit 4 to 5 more brush piles easily in that time. We should be able to at least hit 4 or 5 more brush piles easily in that time. So that's the plan. And I should have enough graft from earlier that we can at least re-fish some stuff I've already fished, see if there's more down there. You would think this little shaky head would get bit if they were biting that big worm. Well, one just tapped it. Probably a bluegill. Okay then. So let's organize ourselves slightly here. And then let's run to that last stretch of brush piles and fingers crossed we can get this to work. Okay guys, so we moved over here to another spot. I forgot to record this part, but basically we moved to another spot where we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brush piles we have marked. So that's a pretty good deal. I'm gonna switch over here to the Livescope view like that. I somehow didn't record that, but that's okay. Okay, let's make sure this is recording. Okay, we're good. Okay, so gotta run all these brush piles as fast as we possibly can and try to catch at least one more good one would be great. We wouldn't have a catch 15 or whatever, but can't always catch 15 every time. But it would be nice to at least catch one more 3-pounder or 4-pounder. Okay, nothing around there. I had a brush pile that I marked. Just that little tree right there. But I guess I'll just drop my worm down by it for a second. Down there pretty deep. I honestly don't think these fish are setting up in that 15, 16 foot zone. I say that and I'll catch a 5-pounder off this random thing I just drove my boat right up on top of, but I have a feeling they're up in the shallower stuff. That's what my gut's telling me. We need to be fishing these shallower tops, and that's what a lot of these things are up here, just shallower brush piles. So, we're about to find out if that's true or false. I'm gonna I need to spin a little bit this way, and then come back around so I can get into the wind. A lot of bait around here, it's nice. Fire over there because there's like a little stick that's sticking out of the water, but it's like right on top of one of those brush piles, so I kind of know what I'm looking at. Save time. I only got probably 20 minutes to fish this stuff, so let's hope that it's enough time. Switch the depth range a little bit. Okay, so there's that stick up that's literally out of the water, but just because it's out of the water doesn't mean there's not going to be a fish on it. It's pretty deep. There's another pile right there. It's a very subtle brush pile right there, but you can see it down there, 60 feet out. It's very subtle though. It's just some logs really is all it is. There's some fish down around it though. Come on, big girl. Oh, golly. Just got hammered. There's a bunch of little small fish around this stuff, I guess. Worms falling down at 50 feet. That's the other thing too with this is like, you run a bunch of piles and it's just like, which ones you catch big ones out of? I don't know. Which ones you can catch small ones out of? Like just getting bit right there. It's hard to tell. So you kind of just have to run them all. You run a little bit of everything. And eventually, you run into a good one. And that's not very scientific or super advanced, but a lot of times that's all it is literally just fish. As many as you can, and eventually you're going to run into one that has a better quality fish, like that one over there that had one good one in it. Not every brush pile is going to have a good one. Not every brush pile is going to even have a fish in it, so you just kind of have to play the odds. It's a nice pile, though. I'll bait this around that pile right there. There's an active fish in there right now. You'd think that he would be wanting to eat. And there's a buffet sitting over his head. Putting that worm right in that brush pile. Hopefully somebody's home. I saw one swim down towards it. Well, still got a few more. The odds are getting less in our favor, though. do want to save like a few minutes to go back and re-hit that one where I caught that set of brush piles where I caught that good one. I think if I refish that one more time, there's a chance I could catch another fish out of that. It's just bait, by the way, that's on the screen there. It looks like brush, but it's just bait. Little stick up right there. Looks like there might be a good one on it too. Oh, he's coming down for it. Oh, eat it, fish. Got him. Oh, that was cool. We saw that on the Livescope. He came out of that brush pile. Oh, no! Oh! Oh! 5 pounder. Four or 5 pounder. Dang it! Oh, you saw that fish come out of that. I saw him. I was like, I knew there was a good one in there. He came down for that deal. I mean, he had the worm and everything. I set the hook hard. He just came up. He was running straight at me. I just never caught up with him. Dang it! Oh, that was a 4 to 5 pounder, guys. It's the fish we were fishing for. Doing this. Oh, that's a heartbreaker right there. That is a heartbreaker. Let's keep fishing. I'm gonna pause the recording. That was rough. Oh man, guys, that just sucks. Losing big ones, just never fun. His whole mouth, I saw his whole mouth. His mouth was like that. It was freaking big. Oh, it was big, quite a bit bigger than the one I caught earlier. Put it that way. 20-pound test. Setting the hook hard with a heavy action 7/6 rod. Should be able to pin him, but sometimes it just happens. He was swimming so fast towards me, and then he jumps right at the boat. I think my line may have hit my trolling motor, but he was just running so fast, there wasn't anything I could do. He was hot, but we figured out the deal. 12 foot of water, small little brush piles, 10 to 12 foot of water, small little brush piles, big worm, dragging it around. He was just on that little tiny stick up too. I mean, that's like a nothing. And again, it's just like flipping. It's like basically like offshore flipping is what it is. That's all you're doing. Oh man. Old big head. Why'd you have to do me like that? Some brush behind me. I think I fished all that already, I think. Had to have fished all that already. I don't know, did I fish all of that? I don't know if I did. How did I miss all that? I had to have fished that. Man, that just eats you up, doesn't it? But we're showing you guys the process at least. It's working. That was like 7 brush piles again too. So these odds are like pretty good right now. We're hitting the proverbial brush pile odds better than I would normally expect, because I would normally expect it would take 15 brush piles, 10 to 15 brush piles between fish catches, and I'm kind of doing it every, I don't know, every 7 on average, so that's pretty good, honestly. Got him. Oh, stay on there, fish. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. Whoa, calm down there, fish. Calm down there. Oh, there we go. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Freaking bigs right there. Big fish out of that brush pile. Oh, that's even smaller than the one I just lost, guys, and that is a tank. Oh, there we go, guys. Just weighed this for the video back there, 4 pounds, 1 ounce. Got 9 pounds, 3 ounces for my 3 fish. Just lost one that was bigger than this, probably a 5-pounder I just lost. And that is absolutely awesome. Beautiful fish right there. Let's get this beast back down in the lake. And he's off. Oh, there we go, guys. So basically, got that fish again on the 10-inch worm. And it's crazy because I fished these brush piles earlier today. I graphed them earlier today, and I didn't get a single bite. And I went 2.5 hours without catching a single fish. And it just really goes to show how important timing is offshore. It's now like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and these fish are finally setting up because we had that cloud cover all morning that kept them scattered and roaming. I probably would have been better off fishing up shallow all morning, but it was useful getting out here and graphing and spending that time finding these isolated pieces of cover, because when the timing was right, I started catching them. I'm catching them really well. Now, when I did my uncut videos in the past, what you'll find is that I was fishing in that first 2 to 3 hours of the morning, especially the last 2 or 3 videos. And the fish were scattered out. I was struggling to catch fish. And it was the same thing this morning. Struggling to get bit, and I decided to just keep pushing through. My cameras were able to kind of keep going today because it's not as hot. And normally this is when I catch the majority of my good offshore fish, is between, let's say, noon and 4 o'clock. When I've fished tournaments in the past, my key window of opportunity was from 12 to 3, and usually I would only have 1 or 2 keepers in the boat at noon, and then I would fill out my limit like I am doing right now, and we would be in business. So taking that time to graph, spending time finding these brush piles, playing the odds is a great way to put some really good fish in the boat. And don't be afraid to re-fish the same areas you've already fished, because you can put some really good fish in the boat. I'm actually gonna end this uncut here. I could go and catch a few more fish, but there's not really any reason. I'm super pumped about all of this, catching some good ones. Caught all those fish again on that Big Bite Baits B2 10.5-inch plum apple worm with a 5/0 offset Gamakatsu worm hook, a 1/8 ounce Denali tungsten slip sinker, pegging that with a peg, 20-pound Sunline FC Sniper fluorocarbon for my main line, throwing that with the Denali 7'6" heavy power fast action worm and jig rod in the Covert Light series and Abu Garcia Black Max reel. That was my full setup, and we absolutely hammered them today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll see you guys in the next one.